which is page 66 through 68 in your book. Talked a little bit about this the other day, but today we're really going to get into it. And hopefully, if not get all of the seafarer done too, at least a good chunk of it. Hopefully, okay? Because we're immediately going to slow down. I talked a little bit about this the other day, and this is why I put this. The Old English is up on the left-hand column with the Modern English translation on the right. We're not even going to talk about this translation on the right. But I am going to look up Old English words every now and then, and I'll probably write them on the board too, like I did here. So let's look at the opening of the poem. Oft him anhaga arja bideth, mertudes milza, thotha hen moldkari, jan lagulada, longa shelda, hreran mit hondum, hrim kaldesai, waden raklastus, reared beful a red. Okay? Lews's translation, always the one alone longs for mercy, the maker's mildness. Though troubled in mind, across the ocean ways, he has long been forced to stir with his hands the frost-cold sea and walk in exile's paths. Weird is fully fixed. Okay? So, I haven't written it all down. Oft. We have the same word in modern English. We usually put an "in" on it. Often. Okay? That's another one of those examples, as we were talking about the other day. Do you pronounce it often, or do you pronounce it often? Historically, that T is completely silent. It's not pronounced. Okay? Similarly, this is what? It's part of your body. Is it your forehead or is it your forehead? Because historically it rhymes with horrid. Okay? So, oft him anhaga arja bideth, mertudes milza, etc., etc. Often or always. What's the difference between often and always?
Often is less often than always.
Yeah, often is less often than always. Often is sometimes, sometimes not. It's more so than not, but always is always. Okay? Him alone. I mean, that's literally what that means. Okay? You could say alone, but it's the solitary one. Okay? So often the one alone, what? This word, God's mercy, or more literally, the measurer's mercy. Okay? We tend to just say method or method is God, because what other measurer kind of would it be? We're not talking about the three faints or the norns, etc. So these two words are really important. How important? Well, I will argue that they are so important they determine what the rest of the meaning of the poem is. Look again at the introductory stanza, let's call it. Always the one alone longs for mercy. Let's do it up here. Oft him anhaga arja bideth. Always the one alone. Let's leave arja bideth alone for just a moment. Just leave that blank, okay? The Lord's mercy, or God's mercy, even though he in mind, okay, that's mod carry. We have a word today that has most of those sounds to it. We drop off the E and put Z. Cares. A mind full of cares. Full of problems up here. Even though he mentally disturbed, if you want, or intellectually troubled, or wrestling with problems, what? Jan lagulada longa shelda. Jan lagulada. Jan yawned throughout the lagulada. That's the ocean. Okay, what? Long, for a long time, shelda, that's had to, must. Okay? Do what? Hreran, row, mid handum with, that's mid handum, his hands. Okay, so is he talking about rowing with oars? Or is he talking about rowing like in a kayak without oars, without paddles, with your hand in the water? Okay. The Hremkaldesei, the ice-cold sea. Laden Raklastus. How do they translate rat? Travel. Okay. What word do we get? Just look at it. What word do we get from Laden? Wade. Wade. He wades. Okay. Even though today the register of that word is much more specific and narrow, right? What does wade refer to? You go through shallow water. You walk through shallow water. So there's the travel part. Their translation, travel, because Liusa translates Latin, walk. Okay? What? The raklastas. Two words there joined together. Rak. And lastas. Okay? Lastas. Don't have somewhere where I can do it. The bottom of your shoe is called the last. It's the shape of the sole. Okay? So when you see footprints in sand, you're seeing the last of the person's foot. You're seeing the imprint of that shape. Okay? Different shoes have different lasts, different shapes to them. A boot has a different shaped last than does a dress shoe or high heels, you know. So what's the first part? So if this means the essentially footprint or footprints, what's this? We have this word in modern English in a form. It's pronounced quite a bit differently. This gives us modern English, wretch. In the footsteps of the wretch, or in wretched footsteps. Okay? It gets translated, what it really means in Anglo-Saxon, however, because this is how this word doesn't derive from this other word, but it gives us a more specific meaning. It means exile. Okay? Because if you were in exile, guess what? You're wretched. You are a wretch. And I'll explain why in just a moment as we get a little bit deeper into the poem. Okay? So, often or always, the solitary person, something, God's mercy, even though full of troubles, he has had to travel through the sea a long time, rowing with his hands in the ice-cold sea, walking, traveling, wading, the paths of exile. Then you get that little short gnomic phrase. Gnomic. G-N-O-M-I-C. What does that mean? It's like a proverb. Okay? Proverbs aren't necessarily crystal clear. It's a wisdom saying. All right? That little half verse. Weird bith fool arad. And notice, Liusa doesn't translate weird. He just leaves it weird. Though he doesn't spell it by its modern English spelling. Weird, man. What does that mean? If something is weird, it means you can't categorize it. You can't explain it. Okay? That's not what it means in Old English. In Old English, the closest we can come to in a modern mindset is it's like fate. Notice, it's like fate. What's the problem with like? It's not exactly. You're not saying that's what it is. Okay? I think the best way to translate weird is what will be, will be. What will be, will be. full ared. Bith is full, fully, completely, entirely. Ared. That rad there, that's related to that word that we talked about the other day, advised. Only here it has a slightly different meaning. Fixed. It's fully, completely advised. Meaning, like set in stone. Is this an old English example of predestination? Could be. Could be one way, a Christian way of looking at it. It could be an old English example of modern behavioral determinism. You know, the evolutionary clock, 4 billion years ago, boom, outer space, somewhere, and that set everything in motion, and everything that happens is nothing more than pool balls on a billiard table, careening through time, history, matter, etc. Okay? So that's the opening stanza. But we've got this to deal with. Because what does often the solitary person this? Okay. This phrase here is restating that word. It stands in apposition to it. And this is one of the way Old English poetry works. You often see something renamed multiple times. Beowulf is frequently referred to as the son of ENGL. Why? Because they forget his name? No. Alliteration. The line needs something that maybe alliterates on the s sound or the vowel sound, rather than just B. Okay? So, this rephrases this. That helps us understand a little bit more about what this word means. Okay? I said, Metudas, God's mercy. So do we translate this, therefore, as mercy? In which case, it gets a little redundant. Or do we expand mercy a little bit? What does mercy mean? What is God's mercy? Well, what often gets translated, for example, in the King James as mercy, another way of translating it, what some translators do, is they replace that with loving kindness. Loving kindness. Okay? So, often the solitary person alone, loving kindness, God's mercy, this, or favor. God's mercy can be favor, right? This, grace. Now, what's the difference between favor, grace, mercy, and prosperity? This is one of those word games. One of these doesn't belong.
Prosperity.
Yeah, prosperity doesn't really belong. Unless you're in a prosperity gospel kind of mentality or church, you know. Jesus loves you and he wants you to be rich. And if you're not rich, it's because Jesus doesn't love you anymore. And you've done something wrong. There are those who preach that, okay? It's not really what that's saying, however. So, favor, grace, mercy, all those imply what on the Metudas part? He likes you. Or is showing kindness to you. You know, the Old Testamental prayer, may God make his face to shine upon you, bless you, etc., etc. But then you have this word. I told you we'd get behind because, I mean, we're 25 minutes. We haven't even gotten through one line of Old English. Okay? Yebedeth. Liusa translates that, longs for. Experiences is the way whoever runs this website, I have no idea who that is. Where is this? This is University of Brunswick, I guess, in Canada. I think if I know who's there. I don't off the top of my head. Okay. Is it experiences, as this translation has, or is it longs for? I mean, those are two almost opposite, right? Because think about this. If the solitary person alone, who has for a long time had to tread the paths of exile over the ice-cold sea, rowing with his hands, if he experiences God's mercy, then that means everything that he's endured is part of that mercy. That is rowing the ice-cold sea. That's part of experiencing God's mercy. In other words, this is God being nice to him. So if that's God being nice to him, what's the flip side? All right? Longs for, well, that's, in a modern mindset, that's a little bit easier to understand, right? Because you would think being all alone out on the sea, troubled with your thoughts, hands freezing in the water, you would long for, Lord, have mercy on me. You'd be asking for mercy. In which case, what are you really asking for? Take me away from this situation. Give me ease. All right? So, pretty different. Expects. How is expects different than longs for?
You have a predetermined mindset that it's coming to you.
Exactly. You believe it's going to happen. Longing for doesn't imply that at all. Longing for, another way to put longs for is just desires. Well, we all have desires that are unmet, right? I used the example of the other day. What if this was a salary raise? Oh, then these take on a lot more significance, right? I'm going to get down to, brass tacks, so to speak. Because desiring a raise and experiencing a raise, vastly different things. Okay? Notice how significant individual words can be for interpretation. And how you interpret the Old English then does what? It makes full arad, fully fixed, the interpretation of the poem. It determines. How you interpret determines the meaning. How you translate determines the meaning. So if you just say, none of these are included, and you limit your reader by saying this, what does that do to those other possibilities? It shuts them out. Notice, it doesn't give you, the reader, if you're not familiar with Old English, it doesn't give you the nuance and subtlety that is there in the original. That's why Bede, in that section we talked about the other day, said, this is the gist of Cadman's hymn. Why? Because I'm translating it. And when I translate it, you don't get it in its original meaning. So to understand something in its original, if you really want to read, my daughter's reading Dostoevsky in high school, if you really want to read Crime and Punishment, learn Russian. First of all, to read Russian, Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment in Russian, it's an 800-page novel. Okay? But to have to learn Russian first, that's what Bede is essentially saying. Okay, so let's go on. Thus spoke the wanderer. Swaquath erd stappa. Erd, earth, stappa, stepper. That's what the earth stepper said. Okay? Ervatha yamindi. Mindful. Mindi. Okay? Mindful of hardships. Thus spoke the wanderer, mindful of troubles, of cruel slaughters and dear kinsman's downfall. Notice, who's saying the thus spoke thee? Is that this person saying that? No, this is somebody else now. So it's almost like this should have quotation marks around it. Because we have at least two speakers in the poem now. Right? Is this, the person saying thus spoke, is this the omniscient narrator looking down into the wanderer's mind? Possibly. We don't know that the wanderer, the Anhaga, literally said this, or if he just thought it. Thus spoke the wanderer, mindful of troubles. What troubles? Cruel slaughters, dear kinsman's downfall. Those are the mind full of cares that he has. Okay? And then he goes on. Who's the he? We're going back to the wanderer, the Anhaga. Often alone in the first light of dawn I have sung my lament. There is none living to whom I would dare to reveal clearly my heart's thoughts. I know it is true that it is a nobleman's lordly nature to closely bind his spirit's coffer, hold fast his treasure hoard, whatever he may think. Okay? So what has he just said is kind of the natural inclination of the, how's he call him? The nobleman. Where is that up here? There is none to whom. The Weenamaga. Okay? Trouble comes, and it's the natural inclination to do what?
Embrace stoicism.
Embrace stoicism. Okay? Even though the Anglo-Saxons wouldn't know what stoicism is. In other words, shut up. British, the attitude that is attributed to the British. Stiff upper lip. It's attributed to them for a reason. It's here back to the founding of the English nation. You have this given repeatedly through English literature. This is a characteristic of the English-speaking people. This stiff upper lip attitude. Okay? So, to closely bind his spirit's coffer. What is his spirit's coffer? Coffer means like treasury place. Like safe. Well, what's the safe of the spirit? It's the heart. It's the heart. Bind it up. Wrap it up really tight. Why? So nothing slips out. To hold fast his treasure hoard, whatever he may think. Right? To keep what is inside. Whatever the problems are. Very different from our modern, 21st century televised confessional society. Where you go on Oprah or Dr. Phil and, spill it all out there. Just lay everything out, everything you've done. Or get on this thing. In Facebook, everything. The weary mind cannot withstand weird. The weary mind. What does weary mean? Modern English. What does it mean when you're weary? Tired. So is this just the tired mind, You only got 4 hours of sleep last night, so you can't withstand weird? No. This is a different kind of weary. Okay? Not may the weary mind weird withstanden. With means against. Modern English, it means exactly the opposite. Modern English means alongside. Except for one usage. When we say to withstand something. Then it has its Old English original meaning. Okay? The weary mind is not able to withstand weird. Again, how do you translate weird? As I said, I think the best translation is what will be. So why can't the weary mind withstand that? Because it's already beaten down and tired. Right? You've known people. Maybe you've been these people who it seems like just one bad thing after another just avalanches on you. I mean, just again and again and again. Well, your mind is probably weary. And your friends are probably thinking, that person can't take anymore. And yet, you do. The weary mind cannot withstand weird. The troubled heart can offer no help. It's the heart can't offer help to what? The mind. Okay? It's not somebody else's trouble in the heart. It's not my mind is weary and tired, but she's got a troubled heart and she's going to try and help. No, it's this and this. Okay? And so those eager for fame often bind fast in their breast coffers their hearts, okay, a sorrowing soul. Notice that. You want fame? Don't talk about your problems. Again, kind of opposite of our modern society. Just as I have had to take my own heart, this is the wanderer speaking, and do what? I've had to take my own heart, often wretched, that is, my heart was wretched, not I wretched, often wretched, cut off from my own homeland, far from dear kinsmen, and do what? Bind it in fetters. Fetters, manacles, handcuffs. Okay? Ever since. In other words, beginning when? Ever since long ago, I hid my gold-giving friend. Siden jag är ju goldwina mina husen helstra bira. Ever since long ago, he says, I hid my gold-giving friend in the darkness of earth. Okay, helstra, the word that's up there, husen bira, husen in the earth, helstra. It's holster. He holstered his gold-giving friend. Now, is his gold-giving friend just a friend of his who has some gold and he gives it to him? No. Who is it? It's his Lord. Okay? Talked a little bit the other day about Anglo-Saxon society. Not a lot, but a little bit. So you have that relationship that we discussed of Lord to Thane. Okay? The Lord's hall is the locus of society. It's the center of especially pagan Germanic society, but also even Anglo-Saxon society. Okay? It's where the Lord dispenses treasure. It's where the Lord dispenses justice. Okay? It's where all the major announcements are given out. It's the center. So if something happens to that hall, or something happens to the Lord, who is the Lord of that hall, what happens to society? It fractures. It's destroyed. Okay? So he says, ever since he had to do what? Bury my Lord. We're not told why, other than that we assume the Lord is dead. He's not burying him alive. Okay? And so he buried his gold-giving friend in the darkness of earth and then went wretched, winter sad, over the ice-locked waves. Sought what? Hall sick. That is, sick for a hall. He sought a treasure giver, a new Lord. He's seeking somebody to replace his Lord. Well, why doesn't he set himself up as a Lord? Because you can't do that in Anglo-Saxon society. Okay? A treasure giver, wherever I might find, far and near, someone in a meat hall who might know my people. Someone who might know of my tribe. What's he implying? How many of you have read James Fenimore Cooper's The Last of the Mohicans? Not many people do anymore. Okay? Because Chingachgook in Last of the Mohicans, after his son Uncas is killed, says, as he buries his son, I am the last of my people. Okay? This guy is the last of his people. He's the only survivor. Okay? And you get this motif also in Old English literature, the idea of the last survivor. It's not in Old English only, by the way. You get it biblically. Okay? Read the book of Job. Such and such happened, and I alone am escaped to tell thee. These messengers come to Job. Tell him when his livestock get wiped out, his children get wiped out, etc. Okay? So, why does he go seek a new Lord, a new treasure giver? Someone in the meat who might know my people? Or who would want to comfort me? Friendless. Friendless. He doesn't just mean, golly gee, I don't have any friends. Everybody hates me. Friend here might be specific, and it might refer to his Lord. Okay? Might be. I'm not saying that it necessarily is. And would want to comfort me, friendless, accustom me to joy. That is, make me accustomed once again to joy. Because where does a thing have the custom of joy? In the hall. The hall is where the shope comes in and sings for the enjoyment of people. Or jugglers come in, etc. So he goes on. He who has come to know how cruel a companion is sorrow for one with dear friends will understand. What is he who has come to know? What does that really mean? Is there a biblical kind of corollary to that? Yes, there is. Let him who has ears to hear. What does he mean? If you've experienced this, you know what I'm talking about. The speaker is saying, not all of you will understand this, but those of you who have been in my shoes, you know what I mean. So that's another gnomic passage. He who has come to know how cruel a companion is sorrow for one with dear friends will understand. What does he mean for one with few dear friends? How few? None. This is an example of what's called Litotes, which is extreme understatement. Okay? Understatement. How extreme? How few friends does he have? Well, the fewest you can. 0. We're going to see more of this understatement when we do the Dream of the Rood, and the Seafarer, and even again in the Wanderer. Okay? The path of exile claims him. That is the person who has no dear friends left. The path of exile claims, you've got to do this. Why? If everybody here is dead, you can't just stay here. Why? Your identity is bound up with this thing. You have to find another hall in order to count as anything. So, the path of exile claims him, not patterned gold, a winter-bound spirit, not the wealth of earth. Might he be talking about a different kind of Lord? Not just one who gives earthly treasure. Because what obviously happened to the earthly treasure distributed here?
It's gone.
It's gone. So might he be seeking a different kind of Lord? Yeah, it's possible. It's possible that the poem is an allegory of sorts. Okay? So he goes on. He remembers, that is, he who has been in my shoes, he who has come to know how cruel a companion is sorrow when he has few dear friends, he remembers hall holders and treasure taking. How in his youth his gold-giving Lord accustomed him to the feast. If you've been in my, you know what it's like. You remember what it's like to be a thane of a Lord, to be one of the chosen. Okay? That joy has all faded. Faded. As in, it's gone from dark blue to light blue? No, it's faded like fade to black. It's not seen anymore. And so, he who has long been forced to forego his Lord's beloved words of counsel will understand. If you've not been present, boy, and this just hit me. Wow. And if you've not been present with your Lord for a long time, you will understand. This gives even more to the allegorical possible interpretation. When sorrow and sleep both together often bind up the wretched exile, it seems in his mind that he clasps and kisses his Lord of men, and on his knee lays hands and head as he sometimes long ago in earlier days enjoyed the gift throne. What? He says, if you've been without a Lord and companions for a long time, you'll understand this. What happens? Sorrow and sleep do what? They bind up the wretched exile. So that what happens? It seems in his mind that he clasps and kisses his Lord of men. What's he? Dreams? Hallucinates? Where is he, first of all? Is he in a nice little warm hut on the ground? No. He's out in the cold sea. Okay? Hallucinates? He thinks he's doing what? Clasping his Lord's knee, seeking mercy, seeking favor. There's that word. Okay? As sometimes long ago in earlier days, he enjoyed the gift throne. You've got a gloss there for gift throne. The description seems to be some sort of ceremony of loyalty, charged with intense regret and longing. Okay? I'm not sure what he means by regret, but definitely the longing. But when the friendless man, notice, awakens, so that's happened in his sleep, so he's been dreaming. When he awakens again and sees before him the foul waves, seabirds bathing, spreading their feathers, frost falling, snow mingled with hail, then the heart's wounds are that much heavier, longing for his loved ones. He wakes up and sees what? He's all alone. Take that back. He's not all alone. Who were his companions?
Seabirds.
The seabirds. Sorrow is renewed. The Old English is, I don't have it pulled up far enough. Sword bith renewed. Somewhere up here. Right there. Sorg bith renewed. Sorrow is renewed. When the memory of kinsmen flies through the mind, he greets them with great joy, greedily surveys hall companions. They always swim away. How are his hall companions swimming away? They're the birds. Now he's hallucinating. He was dreaming about his hall companions, and he wakes up, and he doesn't wake up refreshed. And he sees the birds, and what happens? The birds take on the form of friends. And he speaks to them, seemingly. And what happens? Because he greets them with great joy. And they swim away. Damn great birds. The floating spirits bring too few familiar voices. More Litotes. How few? Fred, good to see you. No, it's rah, rah, rah. Cares are renewed for one who must send over and over a weary heart across the binding waves. Notice, the grammar and reference of this intense, almost hallucinatory scene is not entirely clear. In other words, we're not 100% positive what this guy is actually saying here. The translation reflects one commonly proposed reading. Notice, translation gives reading. So with this translation, you can't see what the other commonly proposed readings are. And so I cannot imagine for all this world why my spirit should not grow dark when I think through all this life of men, how suddenly they gave up the hall floor, mighty young retainers. And so, what does the and so mean? What's another one-word phrase that replaces that? Thus. Therefore. It's like 1 + 1 equals. What's he saying? based upon what I've just said, try to tell me why I shouldn't have a dark spirit. Try to tell me why I shouldn't say, life's a bitch, and then you die. Or life sucks. According to what he's saying, this isn't all that great, right? When I think through all this life of men, how suddenly they gave up the hall floor. The word for hall floor there, Old English, is flet. If you're familiar with Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, when Frodo and the gang arrive in Lothlorien and they meet Galadriel in Celeborn, they go up to their flet, treehouse. But flet means floor. So when he says, when they gave up the hall floor, does that mean other people knock on the door and they say, no, come on in, take a place? No. It's a beautiful euphemism for it. They died. They gave up the hall floor. Mighty, notice, young retainers. He's not talking about 70 and 80-year-olds, sitting there taking up space. He's talking about young men dying when? In their prime. Thus, this middle earth droops and decays every day. Every single day. The implication is, today is a little droopier and more decayed than yesterday. And tomorrow will be droopier and more decayed than today. And the day after that will be that much worse. That's not a very, uplifting idea. And so, a man cannot become wise before he has weathered his share of winters in this world. To be wise, what must you have done? Weathered his share of winters. Weathered. Endured. Why winter? Why not spring? Why not summer? Because it's harsh, it's cold, it's cruel. And notice, what does that weathering his share of winters mean? Is the speaker suggesting you can be wise at 17? No. You have to weather them. That means you get what by winter? Older. Louder? Older? What else? Wiser? What else? What happens? What's the difference between an accountant and a guy who builds fences all day long when it's 20 degrees outside? Well, the accountant's fat, dumb, and happy in his warm little office, right? The guy who builds fences, he is weathered. The face, the hands are wrinkled and sunburned and hardened. Okay? He goes on. A wise man must be patient, neither too hot-hearted, nor too hasty with words, nor too weak in war, nor too unwise in thoughts, neither fretting, nor fawning, nor greedy for wealth, never eager for boasting before he truly understands. A man must wait when he makes a boast, until the brave spirit understands truly where the thoughts of his heart will turn. So the wise man must be what? Patient. What does being patient mean?
It means being able to endure the hardship.
Okay. It means being able to endure the hardship. What other way do we understand the word patient? That's a verb form.
Doctor's subject.
The other one is the noun form. Okay? You're sick. And you're in a hospital maybe. Why? Because you're suffering. Mel Gibson's film, The Passion of the Christ. That word passion, that's related to patient. It's the suffering, the enduring of. So when you tell a 5-year-old kid who sees a plate full of cookies and a jug of milk, be patient, That's for after dinner. What are you saying? Suffer, you little brat. Or there's a Christmas tree loaded with presents underneath 2 weeks before Christmas. I mean, that's just cruel, first of all, because you're saying, endure. And the kid's going, mine. So, wise man must be patient. Notice, not too hot-hearted, nor too hasty with words. Too hot-hearted, too willing to strike at the first moment, nor, modern paraphrase, Donald Trump. Don't get on Twitter immediately, That's what he means. Nor too hasty with words. Govern the mouth a little bit. What else? Nor too weak in war. I mean, after the other two, you expect him to say, nor too hot in war. Nor too weak in other words, you're going to go to war? Do what? Polonius says this to his son. When you're going to get in a fight with somebody, make sure what? You walk out. He's on the ground. Okay? What else? Nor too unwise in thoughts. Okay? Neither fretting, nor fawning, nor greedy for wealth. 3 terms there about wealth. Neither fretting for it, worrying, nor fawning, it's mine, nor greedy, wanting more. Never eager for boasting before he truly understands. What does that mean? Boasting before he truly understands. Bragging? What else? What does I don't care what party or who the person, what does every presidential candidate do? They make promises. What kinds of promises? I will solve the problem of Social Security. I will rid the world of terror or ISIS or X, Y, or Z problem. And then they get elected president, okay? And you get the transition period. And what happens almost immediately after they are elected, that person is elected president? What does that person start getting the very next day? Briefings. Sir or madam, here's what you think the world looks like. Here's what it actually looks like. Here's the real situation, maybe with Social Security. Here's the real situation with, North Korea. Over here, you thought, oh yeah, they've got, the word now is maybe about 6 nukes. You get elected and, sir, ma'am, they've got 500 nukes. There's a big difference between 60 and 500, okay? So, don't be too eager to boast. But he's talking Anglo-Saxon times. What does that mean? Jump to Beowulf for a minute. Beowulf arrives at the land of the Danes and says, I'm a monster killer. I'm here to kill your monster. I hear you have a monster problem. His name's Grendel. I'll take care of it. And one guy stands up to him and goes, whoa. We've heard about you. You're the guy who can't even win a swimming contest. And it's not even against Michael Phelps, You think you're going to kill Grendel? Beowulf's like, don't worry. And he starts rattling off monsters he's killed. In other words, he pulls out his resume. Monster killer. And, okay? Before he truly understands, a man must wait when he makes a boast until the brave spirit understands truly where the thoughts of his heart will turn. In other words, what's he saying? Make sure if you're going to take on the monster, that when you see the monster, you don't go, it's a lot bigger than I thought. Or that's a lot worse than I thought. Because, again, let's go back to presidential candidates. What do they often do after he or she gets elected? I'll use he since we've only had males. I didn't realize the problem was this great. What's that called in other terms? Backtracking. Okay? So the Wanderer says, this is all predicated going back to those eager for fame. Right? So, don't make boasts what? You can't keep. Don't say you're going to do something and not do it. The wise man must realize how ghastly it will be. Go way down here. Yeah, right there. Onjeten shall glau halla who gaslich bit. Somewhere up there. The wise man must realize how ghastly it will be when all the wealth of this world stands waste. What's he talking about? When is all the wealth of this world going to stand waste? Ragnarok, Judgment Day. Pick your version, okay? As now. Okay, the speaker is saying now. We don't know an exact date for Anglo-Saxon England when this was first composed, but let's say January 25th, 2018. As now, here and throughout this Middle Earth, walls stand blasted by wind, beaten by frost, the buildings crumbling. Now, I think the speaker of the poem, or the poet who created it, has in mind a set specific place. He is thinking of a place that he can tell his hearers, his audience, just go over there and look at that. And he might be thinking of some place like the city of Bath in England, which at this time was a Roman ruin. That is, there were stone walls, but sometimes the roofs weren't there. Okay? Or even parts of London where there were stone walls, but they weren't entire because they'd been destroyed partially. They'd been ravaged by time and such. Okay? The wine halls topple. Their rulers lie deprived of all joys. Notice, is he talking here necessarily about a specific place? No, I think he's generalizing. He's saying what happens to buildings? They fall apart. Their leaders lie dead. The proud old troops all fell by the wall. And maybe I'm reading too much, but I think the speaker is also saying, and I remember those battles. This is like a Vietnam vet talking about, the Tet Offensive. Or a Vietnam vet who goes to the Vietnam War Memorial in Washington, D.C., who finds the names of friends, touches those names, and mentally is taken back to when those guys died and where and the battles. Okay? This is a warrior speaking. This is somebody who's been in the thick of it. War carried off some, sent them on the way. One, a bird carried off over the high seas. He's not, just 1 second, he's not talking literally. A bird picked up a 180-pound warrior with his armor and flew over the sea. He means a bird picked up part of the warrior as the warrior's body lay unburied on the field of slaughter. And the bird came and plucked out an eyeball or something and flew away. Question?
I was going to ask you to remind me of the Tet Offensive. Is that when the Americans tried to take capitals where it's in Vietnam? Or what was it?
That was when the North Vietnamese attacked the American and South Vietnamese forces. And it's often taken, popular consciousness to be this huge loss. We actually won the Tet Offensive. But it's portrayed because there were a huge number of casualties. Okay? And we actually knew it was, some of the military knew it was coming, but the word didn't trickle down. But the way the media in 1968 portrayed it was that it was this huge loss. And it wasn't. Okay? So, War carried off some, bird carried off one the gray wolf shared with death, and one, a sad-faced man covered in an earthen grave. Well, go back to line 22. Ever since long ago, I hid my gold-giving friend in the darkness of earth. I think the one who hid a friend in an earthen grave, that's the wanderer, and he's talking about his Lord. He buried his Lord. Okay? Some people read this and think that the wanderer is somehow responsible for the death of his Lord and his people. Nothing in the poem suggests that. All the poem suggests is somehow he survived. Okay? The creator of men, first time this idea is included, other than Metuda's Miltza, okay, or Metuda, the creator of men thus destroyed this walled city until the old works of giants stood empty. Okay, you've got the Old English down there at the bottom. Into your work. This is an often used phrase. We think it's because the Anglo-Saxon writers saw certain things and they said, humans couldn't have built that. You know, Stonehenge. How in the world could puny little men build Stonehenge? Well, we now know exactly how Stonehenge was built. How the rocks were moved from 150 miles away in southern Wales, okay, to how they were lifted and raised, and the whole, we know that. He didn't know it. He didn't understand the engineering of it. Okay? So he says, the Creator destroyed all this until the old works of giants stood empty without the sounds of their former citizens. In other words, the hall is meant to resound with what? Singing, laughing, joy, revelry. And now, what's left? Go to Lindisfarne. First time I've been to England, I don't know, a dozen times. Summer of 2016 was the first time I've ever been able to go to the Holy Isle of Lindisfarne and walk in the remains of Lindisfarne Abbey and the monastery. Okay, and it's all it is. It's remains. Why? Because the Vikings destroyed it. Okay, but you see the walls. You know, and maybe it's just me because I'm weird, but I like if I go someplace that has really old things, I go up and I touch them. Why? Because St. Aidan of Lindisfarne, Celtic saint, etc., lived there. Okay? Or King Alfred, you know, if you go down to Winchester, lived there. And you can touch things associated with it. You can go to parts of London and touch the Roman walls, the actual Roman walls. When I first went to London in 95, I went to the British Museum, because it has everything, you know. It's the great bazaar of stolen artifacts from around the world. And at that time, they had the Rosetta Stone not under glass. They just had a sign that said, please do not touch. Yeah, like hell. You know? I just went up there and, mind meld. Why? Because the Rosetta Stone's 2,500 years old. Ancient Egypt, Greece, all rolled into one. Okay? That's this mentality he's got. He who deeply considers with wise thoughts, he who deeply considers with wise thoughts this foundation, that is, this world, this earth, and this life, old in spirit, not the life being old in spirit, but if the person is old in spirit, meaning wise, he's implying here, you don't have to be old physically to attain this kind of wisdom. But if you're old in spirit, if you learn from others, he often remembers what? So many ancient slaughters and says these words. Here it is. Where quam merg? Where quam mago? Where quam maduniva? Where quam simla yesetu? Where sinden celadremas? Ealabertbuna, ealabernui. This is what's called the Uli Sunt motif. Where are? I think it was Peter, Paul, and Mary in the 1960s had a hit song. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. It was an anti-war song. The flowers were the young men who died in Vietnam. Okay? So, where quam? Where is or are, Lewis' translation, where has the horse gone? Where quam married? Where has gone, quam, came, the horse? Right? Where quam mago? Where is the rider? What's happened to the rider? Exactly. Where quam madhum yiva? Madhum means riches or treasures. Okay? Yiva, giver. Where is the treasure giver? Who is that?
The Lord.
That's the Lord. Where's the? So he's saying, where's the horse? Where's the rider? Where's the Lord? Where quam simbla yesetu? Simbla is hall. Yesetu, the place where he sit. Where are the hall seats? Because he's been talking about what? Destroyed and ravaged buildings. If they don't have the roofs on them, they probably don't have the seats inside. Okay? Where are the joys of the hall? Where is Sinden Sele Dremas? Sele, another word for hall, Dremas. The hall. What is that modern? What does that look like in the modern? Dremas, dreams. The hall dreams. See, we have narrowed the meaning of that word dremas to now it only means what? The thing you do at night. Or maybe aspirations. It means joys. So you have night dremas, and what's the opposite of a night joy? Nightmares. Okay? So where are the joys of the hall? Eala Bert Buna. Eala, lo, the what? The bright cup. Eala Birnwiga. Oh, the Birn, brave warrior. Birni is the armor the warrior puts on. Okay? Oh, the glory of princes. Eala Thadnus Thrym. Who sail Thragyawat Yanap Unanicham Swa Hail No Wera. How the time passed away. Who sail Thragyawat? Slipped into nightfall. Yanap, like napped, under nicht helm, nicht, night, helm. See, we think of helm only as this thing, really. Helmet. What's a helmet? It's a head protector, right? Well, helm means protector, or what is it really? What's the helmet doing to your head? It's covering it. That's what that means. The covering. Okay? So, goes back. Slipped into nightfall, slipped into night covering. Swahel no wera, as if it never was. As if it never was. What does that mean? What happened to the rider? What happened to the horse? What happened to the Lord? What happened to the bright cup? What happened to the brave warrior? They all disappeared. How much? As if they never existed. Now, which is worse? To die and be known, to be remembered, or to die and to be totally forgotten, as if one had never existed at all. That's much, much worse, right? So, he says, there still stands in the path of the dear warriors a wall wondrously high, with serpentine stains. The storm of spears took away the warriors' bloodthirsty weapons, weird the mighty. And storms batter these stone walls, frost falling binds up the earth, the howl of winter when blackness comes, night's shadow looms, sends down from the north, harsh hailstones and hatred of men. There's still a wall where the men died by, and you can go to it, and you can see the patterns in the wall, the serpentine pattern in the wall. And he said, and that wall is blasted by the snows and storms and everything. All is toilsome in the earthly kingdom. The working of weird changes the world under heaven. The working of weird. That's why I think one of the probably best translations is what will be, will be. You can't stop that. Okay? It changes the world under heaven. Notice, this down here changes. What doesn't? Heaven. Okay? Heaven doesn't change. Here, another one of the most famous passages in Old English. Here bith fail landa. Here bith fail landa. Here is wealth fleeting. Or lana. We get two modern English words from this. Lean or loan. Here, wealth is loaned. What does that mean? Every one of you has a student loan. Hate to tell you this. You gotta pay it back. Right? Or a house loan or a car loan. It's not free money. Here, wealth is loaned. We don't get a ticket with us. Here, what else? Here, friends are fleeting. Here, befriend lana. Here, your friends are transitory. Doesn't mean they're friends one day and they're stabbing you in the back the next. It does mean, however, sometimes friends what?
They leave or die.
They die on you. How dare they? I mean, really. Or maybe they move away. Okay? Here, what else? Here, bith mon lana. Here is man, lean or loaned or transitory or impermanent. Here, bith my lana, kinsman. Okay? Or as Leuser translates that one, woman is fleeting. So I don't want to be sexist here. Men are fleeting, women are fleeting, you know. It's not one is more than the other. And then you get all this erdan yistal idol wortheth. All this foundation, all this framework, all this earthen building, whatever. What? Idol wortheth. Becomes worthless. That's not actually what I think is the best translation. Jesus says will stand empty. Becomes idle. Not I-D-O-L. I-D-L-E. If something is idle, what's it doing? Nothing. Nothing. It will stand nothing. It won't be used for anything. What's the purpose of a car? To be driven. The purpose of a building is to be inhabited. Okay? So, said the wise man in his mind. The wise one in his mind. Sitting apart in meditation. Notice then, all of this was not spoken aloud. It's merely what he's thinking. It's what he's meditating on. He is good who keeps his word. So is this now the speaker who said, thus spoke the wise one, thus spoke the solitary man? So we're back to that second speaker. He is good who keeps his word, and the man who never too quickly shows the anger in his breast, unless he already knows the remedy, that is the boasting kind of a thing. unless he already knows the remedy a noble man can bravely bring about. And he ends with another one of these erased gnomic passages. Another one of these wisdom passages. It will be well for one who seeks mercy. That's this. Okay? But notice, Yebedith didn't include seeks. Had experiences, awaits, expects. Now, of those, which is closest to seeks? I think it's expects. So, it will be well for one who seeks mercy. Hold on, let me see. I don't remember what the exact. Tilbitheth his trail Yeholdeth. It'll be well for the one who holds his truth, nor shall never his taunter rich in there. Thinking the last two lines. Yeah, there it is. Well bethumpthe, it's exactly what it is. Well bethumpthe him I saketh. Well be it to him who seeks mercy, favor, grace, etc. Why? Consolation from the Father in heaven. Wherefore us what? Fair, which is where, us, for us, all, entirely, completely, the fastnung, the fastness, the stability, the permanence stands. The whole import of the poem is what? It's two ideas. Down here, kind of what rules? Down here meaning on earth. Is it chaos?
No, impermanence.
It's impermanence. You can't trust anything here to stay the same, right? I mean, leaving everything else aside, what is one of the main problems? You know, the 47% or whatever, the half of Americans who don't like Donald Trump. What's the thing they don't like about him the most? You never know what he's going to do. It's the impermanent kind of thing, okay? So that's down here. Everything's changeable. The other idea is, you want permanence? You want stability? Do what?
Look to God.
Seek it elsewhere. Die. Okay. How does this poem begin? He's had to bury his Lord, so what has he done? He's gone off seeking another Lord, another hall. Here's the possible, I don't want to use the word allegorical. Here's maybe what he's suggesting. Maybe seek a Lord whose hall doesn't rot. Maybe seek a Lord whose hall won't get destroyed. Maybe seek a Lord whose hall, or maybe seek a Lord who won't die again. It's possible. Okay? All right, we'll stop there. So, seafarer on Tuesday. And I was thinking this morning, more than likely,